In this video, we leave on the infamously rough and windy 3-day passage from the Marquesas to the Tuamotu island of Raroia. Timing is everything, as we have to enter the pass at slack tide, then navigate around the plethora of bommies in the lagoon, and finally find a clean strip of sand so that we don't have to float our chain. It's going to be a wild ride. It's a big day. We're getting ready to make the passage to the Tuamotus. It's 5 in the morning and getting the boat ready. Got a beautiful sunset coming up here. We didn't think we'd be leaving today. We thought we'd be leaving tomorrow, but we decided since the weather window looks really good for today, we didn't want to wait an extra day. So that's why we're taking off a day early. And we are ready. We've been ready for the last couple of days. So hopefully we have not miscalculated and this will be a good weather window too. Goodbye, pitons. All right, we are off. Woo, it's a big moment. It's been a long time that we have been talking about heading off to the Tuamotus. We've waited 2 weeks for a weather window. What a beautiful place. We're gonna miss this tremendously. 2 things I do on a passage with the anchor. One is I use the Dyneema line to tie the anchor onto the cleat. The second thing I do is I put these chafe guards on our bridle so that as the water and just wave action hit the bridle, it doesn't chafe here. This is pretty soft and smooth edges, but it's better to just not have any chafing there. So now I've got the chafe guards on, and I also put a zip tie down there because I have lost, unfortunately, one of these beautiful chafe guards. And then I shove this down. Both chafe guards are on. They both have zip ties. They're both wrapped, and we are ready to close this up. All set. Next time we use this is in 3 days. Woo! Do you remember the days when we were afraid to put the sail up at anchor?
Oh yeah. Good in our bag.
It's my first shift at 9 in the morning. We've got great sea conditions. We are zooming along at 6 knots, 12 knots of wind on the beam. Really perfect conditions. Doesn't get much better than that. Let's hope it stays this way. We are very, very happy so far with how things have gone. I got to see some dolphins coming out of the bay this morning and escorting us away from the Marquesas. Almost can't see Wapao any longer. Oh, our bananas took a dump into the dinghy, thankfully into the dinghy and not into the ocean, and fell off the stem, so we've got to process all these puppies. And we've got more over here too that need to be processed. We've got a lot of fruit. At the end of each day, we take a walk around the boat to just look and see if we see any issues. Brown's doing that right now, looking at the mast, checking the shrouds, making sure that nothing has come loose. We don't see any hardware on the deck. It is the end of day 1 on the water, almost 12 hours into it.
Yeah, and this so far has been a very good passage. It's known for being a little treacherous at times.
We spent a couple of weeks looking for a good weather window and waited and were patient, and hopefully that's going to be beneficial to us. We don't know yet. It's still the first day. We're really sad to leave the Marquesas. It's been almost 7 weeks that we've been there, and we loved it. If you are on a sailboat coming across the Pacific, you have to give enough time to the Marquesas. They are truly incredible.
Yeah, and that means if you can get a long-term visa. You know, a lot of people that wish they had. It's amazing that the French government has a way for non-EU citizens to come for 1 or 2 years with your boat. I mean, that is just fantasy land, living on your boat in French Polynesia.
Yeah. So there are huge differences between the Marquesas and the Tuamotus. They couldn't be more dissimilar. The Marquesas are volcanic mountainous islands, and you sail around them. They have lush waterfalls, lush landscapes.
And the Marquesas don't have any cyclones. So they're safe and in the tropics. So it's a very rare combination. We were just really glad we slowed down and took the time.
But in contrast, we now are headed to the Tuamotus, which are the quintessential screensaver for your computer. They are the white sandy beaches, palm trees, 15 shades of blue, atolls. And when we say atoll, we basically mean a volcano that has sunk into the ocean, and all that's left is a coral reef around the outside and a lagoon on the inside. So in almost every case, we are going to navigate through a pass into the lagoon and then spend time inside the lagoon.
You don't have a lot of wind protection. You have protection against that dreaded fetch. And that is the wave action that can start from a storm that's 1,000 miles away. It just keeps going. This stops it. And then on those days where you get no wind, it becomes a tropical paradise. And inside of the lagoon, they're big bommies. And these are pieces of coral that rise up to the surface, right below the surface. They're treacherous. You have to only navigate during the middle of the day. You need somebody out front, and you need to be looking at
satellite
Google
view,
satellite, and all this stuff. You need to be very careful. But there's so much animal life there because all of that structure, fish and sea animals love structure. There's great diving at the passes and animal life. Some of the dives, like Fakarava and Rangi, are some of the most famous dives, best dives in the world.
Night watch, and we've got a full moon which is illuminating the whole sky. It's beautiful. We've got clear skies, which is great. No sign of squall action anywhere. I am on the midnight to 6 a.m. shift. Brown just did 6 p.m. to midnight, and we're making great time. We're actually arriving way too early. We're gonna have to slow down as we get closer, but doing 6 knots speed over ground with 13 knots of wind almost on the beam, and the sea state is really pretty rough. I'm really hoping that as we get south of 15 degrees that things will get a little bit better. But for now, we've just started day 2 and we are rocking and rolling. The sea state is not great. It's pretty confused. The boat is really moving in jerky motions. We've got also waves coming from the beam, which make it much more unstable, but we're doing almost 7.5 knots, 16 knots of wind, apparent wind on the beam pretty much, and making some great progress towards Raroia. Here comes the full moon. While the sun sets, it was the opposite this morning. Second night, everything is great. We've got clear skies and full moon above the boat. Absolutely perfect night. Not a cloud in the sky, which makes things so much easier. We're doing 6.5, 7 knots with 14 knots of wind on the beam. One more night after this, and we're arriving. All right, we are starting our 3rd day on the water, and it is a beautiful one. We have had a great passage, other than the seas being a little bit wonky and uncomfortable. We've done a double reef in our jib, to try and slow down, and it has worked. We're doing 5.5 knots instead of 7.5 knots, so that will help us make the pass at a particular time that's good, not only for the sunlight but also for the current.
Listen, if you need anything, just let us know.
Certainly not often that we have to slow down. That does not happen very much. But we are having to slow down on this passage. We need to make sure we don't get in too early. So we literally have a handkerchief out of the jib sail right now. We still have one reef in the main, and this has sufficiently slowed us down to 4.5 knots, 5 knots.
It's coming in hot.
We're really hoping for a night without squalls, and it's looking pretty good. Yeah, probably a little iffy. The good news is we only have the jib up, so that is going to be easy to deal with if we do have any squalls. Final 6-hour watch tonight. We're doing 4.5 knots with 13 knots of wind on the beam. And make a good time. We should be in about 9 o'clock, and then make some decisions as to when we cross through the pass. I can see land. Barely, but it's there.
Good morning. We are right outside of Raroia. Here's the entrance. And we're hanging out here with 3 other boats who are heading to the same location, perhaps, that we are. We have had a perfect 3-day passage. Normally this passage is fraught with squalls and irregular winds. It couldn't have been more perfect. This is just a dream of a lifetime. Guys, if you like this kind of content, please hit that subscribe button. Join our Patreon and develop that closer relationship with us. Leave some comments, guys. Share this video. Thanks for coming along. We really appreciate you.
We are just a short time away from the Raroia Pass, and I wanted to explain some things that we did in our planning so that we were prepared for this pass, because it's a little unnerving when you haven't done a pass like this. And yes, a lot of the passes in the Bahamas are similar to this, but they're still quite different. In the Bahamas, it's very straightforward because it's an inflow and an outflow, and there's not an atoll. Here you have to deal with the atoll, and you've got to deal with water that is overflowing the coral reef that rings this atoll. So we have to consider the water that is coming over the outside of the reef. When we left the Marquesas, we had to think about what time we would arrive in the Tuamotus, and we really had to plan that based upon 1, arriving in the daytime, and 2, we really wanted to come during a slack tide during that pass. How do we figure out what the tide is going to be in the pass? Well, there is a very crude instrument that has been created by a cruiser that is called the Tuamotus Current Guesstimator, and that guesstimator is what it sounds like. It guesses when the current is going to be slack, and that's what we are going to follow, along with other things like when we go to Raroia, it's about a 30-minute tidal change earlier than the Atoll of Makamo. So we've got that piece of information as well. So adding all these things up, we were able to come up with a time. And basically what we're looking at is the points where the graph crosses the x-axis. And at those points, that's where the tide is going to change. This is the tide that's coming in. This is the tide going out. Tide coming in, tide going out. So today we're looking at an entry of between 10 and 11 would be an appropriate time to try and get in. We always want an ebb tide because you never want to enter when the tide is in the opposite direction as the wind. If you do that, you're going to have standing waves. So we want to go during an ebb tide, which means that the water is flowing in the same direction as the wind. And there's a boat in front of us called Queen, and they're going to go in ahead of us, and they're just going to assess. And if it's too strong, they'll just back out, and we'll watch whatever they do. If they go through, it means that we can go through. We can push through in 2 or 3 knots of current, not a problem. 5 or 6 knots of current, it's not going to happen, or it just wouldn't be very pretty. So we're going to back out in that case. Once we get into the lagoon, then we face a whole nother issue, and that is bommies. So we want to cross this lagoon from there to the east side. This is OpenCPN, and we're going to change our picture to Bing satellite, and this is going to give us a picture from above of all of the bommies here in the lagoon. So we're going to try and avoid those. And at the same time, on my split screen, I'm going to use avionics to also consider where the bommies are based on what Navionics has mapped. So this is what we're going to use to go through. I'm going to be on the bow of the boat looking in the water to see what I see with my eyes, because we never want to trust the charts 100%. It'll be about an hour and 10 minutes or so across the lagoon to the other side. We're really confident about the preparation we've made. Now we just have to experience it and see what it's like. There's one other aspect of this whole process that we have to take into consideration, and that is our anchoring. When we anchor, we have got to try and find a place that has enough sand so that no matter where we would turn in 360 degrees, we would not hit a bommie. If we have the chance of hitting a bommie, then we have to do something called floating the chain, which is we have to add furl floats to our chain to raise it off of the ground, because if a chain gets wrapped on a bommie, it damages the bommie, and our chain could snap if it shortens the length of the chain, and we don't want that to happen. So we are going to look really carefully when we get to the anchorage for a full sandy spot. And our understanding in this particular atoll, it's very easy to find sandy places to anchor and you don't have to float your chain. So that's what our task is going to be after we get through all of the other pieces that we've got to complete just to get into and across the lagoon.
Based on the information we've had from Blown Away, I wasn't really expecting it to be favorable yet. Yeah, I did that guesstimator. Yeah, they're saying 12:15.
Jordan on Queen Jane bailed, and now Kazi's gonna give it a shot. There's standing waves and a lot of whirlpools, so Jordan was not comfortable going through. Let's see what Kazi finds out, and we might take a spin just to get a sense of what it's like. Oh, nope. He's turning out. So Kazi said 1.5 to 2 knots of current, so that's really interesting. It looks worse than that. Kazi's trying for round 2 here.
They do it, we're gonna be right behind it. 5.6 knots. This is so cool.
That's nothing. Good job, babe.
Oh, this is awesome.
3 knots?
Yeah.
Woo!
You can see right there the south port, the scrubber.
Good job, honey.
Not done yet.
We're not through it?
No, we're not out of the woods.
Okay, we're through the pass, and now we're gonna be looking for bommies. These bommies happen to be marked.
Wow.
But there are some that are not. And those are the ones we've really got to watch for. Well, that bommie is not on our charts, and that is a bad one. That would totally wreck the boat. So close to putting anchor down. Yay!
Yeah.
We have just arrived in this beautiful place, and we're gonna head on down the coast with friends of ours to visit the old pearl farm. They're very common here, but I wanted to just show you how beautiful it is out there. Since pearls have dropped in price, the pearl farms in the outer atolls have not been able to stay open. So this pearl farm is one of the ones that had to shut down just because they couldn't earn enough money to keep it running. Really shallow.
Oh, right here.
Look at all the shells. So Kiki was saying that 5 years ago, the Italian boss of this place closed it down. The price of the pearls was not able to afford to have the pearl farm open. So now it just sits dormant, and Kiki is here to monitor it and keep it up. That's a window with a view. Oh my gosh!
So I guess you can't sell it to anybody if the market's so bad.
Wow!
So here we are at the pearl farm that's out of business.
Okay.
And then here's no problem.
Okay.
Caretaker, and they have all kinds of stuff here. And one thing that we really need are these floats. So these are super heavy duty, and they hold up the nets that hold on to the oysters that grow the pearls. And why are we going to do this? So we can float our chain so that we don't tear up any coral bommies. These are bulletproof. They're not going to compress like a fender would underneath water. And these are going to hold it up and not sink. The boutique shop in a way. Who knows what else is here?